We heard the second movement from New Stories by Dorothy Chang, that movement entitled A Tall Tale Told. That was performed by Joseph Lulloff at the saxophone, and at the piano we had Yu-Lien. Good morning and welcome to Live from FM 91, conversation and performance with some of the area's finest musicians and visiting guest artists. I'm your host, Brad Cresswell, and we're coming to you today from the Dana Performance Studio at WGTE. Joseph Lulloff is professor of saxophone at Michigan State University, and Yu-Lien is professor of piano at Western Michigan University, and you also were at BGSU. So if you want to give a shout out to your friends at BG, this is the time.
I used to teach for like 2 years at Bowling Green State University, and I had a great time. So yeah, anybody who listens and like knows me from there, this is a hearty hello from me. So.
Lovely. Well, we kind of reached into the outskirts to get the both of you here today. I appreciate your making the trip and coming in and performing for us.
Oh, thank you.
This is a new album, and we heard from the title track, New Stories by Dorothy Chang. This album is called New Stories, and this is a piece that was commissioned by you, Joe, right?
It sure was, yes.
Yeah. And what can you tell us about the music we just heard?
Well, Dorothy Chang is one of several composers I've really enjoyed collaborating with over my career, I had the opportunity to hear her music through a colleague of mine, Dr. Christopher Creviston. At the time, Chris was in New York City.
A prominent sax player, I should add.
Very prominent saxophonist. And actually, he and I have similar roots, studying at Michigan State University, where I did my undergraduate and graduate degrees with our mutual teacher, Jim Forger. Both Jim and Chris had reached out to me saying that you really must check out Dorothy Chang's music. And her first piece that I was exposed to was two preludes for saxophone and piano. And Chris had a recording, but he shared it to me, and it just hit me, really close to my heart. It was such a beautiful piece, and the melodies and the energy of the piece spoke so much to me that I reached out to Dorothy. Maybe a year or so later, and I came up with a project. I wanted to commission composers whose music really touched me in various different ways, whose music really inspired me, and also music that was I would be able to express really in the best possible sense. I felt that this music really showed off the skills that I used, had as a saxophonist. Dorothy got back to me and said I'd love to do it. A couple of years passed on because she had a very busy schedule, and then back in 2012-13 we started this commissioning process of this piece, and it came to fruit with the Barlow Grant in 2014, and it has really received a lot of wide airplay amongst my colleagues, and many students have done it. It's been seen in competitions in the United States, and it's really a terrific piece.
Well, this is from the album New Stories, and you're offering sort of a preview of that today. We want to mention that New Stories from Blue Griffin Records is available at their website. It's also, is it on your website yet? Or
yes, it's going to be on my website here very shortly. We're doing a little bit of a redesign, and
well, it's also available from usual digital outlets if people are interested. The next piece we're going to hear is by Stacy Garrup, who is a wonderful composer based in the Chicago area. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about the piece we're going to hear. It's called Shock. It's the second movement from a larger work called Wrath by Stacy. Can you intro that for us?
I think Stacy... Again, Stacy is a dear friend of the saxophone. She's written so many wonderful works for so many mediums involving saxophone. This particular piece, written for the tenor sax, is her. I think it's her first piece written for the instrument, but also it reflected sort of the like a story of an angry teenager rebelling against their parents. And maybe that's one version of the story she mentioned. She also, I think it was her musical response to the election of several politicians, I think, back in 2016.
Well, let's hear it now. This is Shock, the second movement from Wrath by Stacy Garrup. Joe Lulloff playing on the tenor sax, along with Yu-Lien at the piano here on Live from FM 91. I feel like we've taken a journey in about 6 minutes listening to that music, because it starts out very soft and then it gets, kind of crazy, and then it ends very soft again. And Yu-Lien, I noticed that you're playing a lot of those open fifth chords, in the piano. What can you tell us about this piece?
It's interesting because it is like it conveys so much emotion sort of in a space that is called sort of almost like static for the piano, which is kind of she almost treats it like percussively,
but it's very exposed on the piano, I think.
For sure. And just to kind of get the colors, because it's it's this repeated chord that just happens over and over again, and just to show sort of the development of like either growing or diminishing, to kind of pace that correctly can be a little tricky. So but it's I think again, it's interesting how she conveys so much emotion and expression within just these like few
simple
chords.
Notes.
Really, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Let me ask you, while I have you at the microphone, tell us a little bit about yourself. That you told me beforehand that you were German, right? You were born in the Netherlands, I believe.
Yes, I was born in Amsterdam. It's a very convoluted, complicated story. So my name is obviously not very German. So my parents were we have a Chinese background basically, but they were actually from Indonesia. So they were like part of Chinese minority in Indonesia, and they immigrated to Germany / the Netherlands. So my mom actually studied piano. So she was my first piano teacher. So she studied piano in Amsterdam and finished her studies. And I was born there. And then we joined my father in Germany. And so I basically grew up in Germany, like German citizen. And spent a good
Did you come to the States then to study, or was there a special reason?
Yes. Yeah, I came basically in 1999. So this is a while back. So I originally didn't mean to stay. I just came for like a year abroad and to just kind of find myself and study. And
next thing you knew, you had to stay.
Exactly. And then my husband, so like Henning Schroeder, who plays with Joe, I don't know, in the quartet. So he sort of followed me, and then now we live here. I have 2 kids here, and so we just kind of...
You never looked back, except for on this show.
Right. No, it's interesting to be sort of like in between these, in between countries. The longer we're gone, I mean, there are always things that I miss about Germany, but then when I'm over there are things that I miss here. And now with our kids here and being fully American, we're truly really between two worlds. So in some ways, actually, the Dorothy Chang piece is really interesting for me personally, just because she also has an Asian American / Asian Canadian background, and so there's sort of a I can kind of relate to sort of being between those two worlds, because I think she sort of mentioned in her program notes that part of the inspiration for new stories is really these influences from all these cultures that she's been exposed to. So
Well, the next piece we're going to hear is by Carter Pan, who is another composer that I admire very much. Who wants to introduce these 2 movements from the Sonata for alto sax and piano?
Yu-Lien, you can. Okay. I like listening to you talk. Joe's resting his head on one arm, just waiting for you to talk, right?
Okay. Well, in some ways that actually makes sense. Carter is himself a very accomplished pianist, and that becomes very apparent in his music. It is, it's not easy music for from a pianistic point of view, but it's very pianistic, so it feels very good. It's really in the tradition of these great pianist composers. So the second movement that we performed, actually, so it's called Song Without Words, which of course is a nod to Mendelssohn's Songs Without Words, these piano solo pieces. And it's interesting because it's conceived as a movement. So it's one movement that really contains 3 separate sort of almost, not quite, but almost standalone pieces, and so they all have their own titles. So like 2A, so to speak, is Reverie, and then we have Soaring is a second part, and then we didn't play the third, which was Contemplation.
Contemplation. Yeah.
Yes.
Contemplation.
So so that is interesting in terms of the form. That whole sonata, it's conceived as like basically, by its title, it's a sonata, has 4 movements. Does it have 4 movements?
It has
yes,
4 movements.
4 movements.
Sure does.
But then the second movement is basically split into these 3. So it's a pretty monumental
This is what
work.
you get, Joe, when you turn it all over to your pianist.
But you didn't mention my favorite movement, which is Cup of Joe, which was written a 2-minute Fast and Furious ride to the coffee shop, which I love drinking coffee, now only decaf. Yeah. But at that point, that was how Carter always liked to refer to me as Cup of Joe.
Yeah.
So,
well, if folks want to hear that, they have to go for the album.
That's right. That's right. And with a cup of coffee.
But let's hear these 2 songs without words, Reverie and Soaring. This is from the Sonata for Alto Sax and Piano by Carter Pan, performed here on Live from FM 91. saxophonist Joseph Lulloff with pianist Yu-Lien. We heard three songs, well, two of the three songs without words, which make up the second movement of the Sonata for alto saxophone and piano. That's music by Carter Pan. We heard Reverie and Soaring. Now, Joe, I know you let Yu-Lien talk a lot during the last break, so I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Okay.
Let's just talk about the piece that we're going to hear next, the Sonata by César Franck. This comes from a different CD of yours.
Yes, it does. Four Shades of French, which was recorded about, I think it was 2017 or somewhere around there, with my colleague at Michigan State University, Deborah Moriarty, who's head of the piano program there. Mm-hmm. And I've known Deborah for many years, first as a student when I was a student at Michigan State, and then I left for 7 years where I taught at University of Illinois, and I came back and have been there since '91, and I did a lot of various projects with her here and there, and then we kind of were sitting in a faculty meeting one time, and she came to me. She says, I think you really enjoy playing the Franck Sonata. We need to play that piece. That's a piece you can definitely, this is your piece. And I'm like, on the saxophone?
Yeah. It is originally for violin, right?
It is, yeah. And so we started doing it, and we actually came up with a program of various transcriptions that I had done in my lifetime. And so I set this transcription. I mean, there's several transcriptions that are published out there of the Franck, but I've adjusted some of the octaves to sort of match the saxophone timbre, and also there's a limit to the range of the bottom end of the saxophone. So I've adjusted some things, and I think it works with the mood of the music and the intent of the music very well. And I think we had such a great time performing it in several places. We decided to make an album with that. Well,
this brings up an interesting question, because you've brought in music that was written for the saxophone, and relatively speaking, it's a fairly new instrument, in the world of classical music. And you've done a lot of transcriptions, which you showcased on this album, the French Composer's album. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the challenges of just finding repertoire of music that was written for your instrument.
Well, it's seemingly a new instrument, although it was, invented in 1842 or 1843. And we have, I think, starting to become a large body of mainly contemporary works for the instrument. I mean, I think the amount of works that have been written in the past 10 years equal to the amount of works written for that entire 180-year period of the saxophone. I saw something written, I can't remember. But, of course, there's a lot of, young composers writing for, students writing for students at universities and whatnot that start to become very popular music, in our saxophone world. I found that there's a number of great saxophone works that I still would love to record, and I'm looking forward to playing. But I also found an interest in transcriptions, because particularly for my teaching and also for my own learning, studying other styles of music, studying other musicians, violinists, great violinists, great pianists, great cellists, great flutists, great instrumentalists. This is one of the best ways we can grow as really a complete musician, I think. I'm very involved in jazz too, and so the element of transcription really was pretty natural for me. Oftentimes I would not write the part out, but I would sit and listen to some of the pieces that you have on the Four Shades of French, and I would transcribe it from ear first. And that really, I was able to find the essence and sort of the nuances of the artist that was playing it. And I listened to several cellists, actually, of the Franck Sonata. I don't have necessarily a favorite, but it's a piece that really speaks to me.
Yeah. Well, let's hear the second movement now. This is the Allegro second movement from the Sonata in A minor by César Franck. Saxophonist Joseph Lulloff, who plays alto sax on this sonata, and pianist Yu-Lien here on Live from FM 91. The second movement from the Sonata in A minor by César Franck, as transcribed by the gentleman that we heard performing it. That was alto saxophonist Joseph Lulloff, joined by pianist Yu-Lien. That is from his album called Four Shades of French. We also sampled Joseph Lulloff's latest album, New Stories, with pianist Yu-Lien in the program today. Those are both available from Blue Griffin Records, and you can find those at all the usual digital outlets as well as the record company itself. That's at bluegriffin.com. I want to thank you both for making the trip and for performing and sharing this wonderful music with us here on Live from FM 91.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here, and we really appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been so much fun.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Live from FM 91. The broadcast engineer for our program was Logan Cooney. I'm your host and producer, Brad Cresswell. Thanks for joining us today here on your public radio station, FM 91.